Yeah, let's see like that. Yeah.
Happy Monday, everyone. My name is Greg Dixon. I'm here with Margo Arrowsmith and Betty Withrow. And their main topic here is your perfect retirement living. But today's topic is getting help doing the things you love as your health deteriorates. And I think, Margo, you have a story related to this.
I do, and I actually hope maybe someday this man can come and talk to us. But I'm going to tell you his story. He's very inspirational. He became a client of mine probably oh gosh, I don't even know, maybe 5-6 years ago. And he first started seeing me for personal issues, but he had about 6 months into it, he told me that actually he had been diagnosed earlier with Parkinson's, which, he was kind of in denial about. It was never, he was in denial about it. It wasn't going to get to be that bad, but he was just a lovely man. He was a tech guy. I worked for IBM or one of those places. I don't even know which one. But he also was an amateur carpenter, and he wrote really clever, funny, acerbic poetry, which I loved his poetry. So kind of a Renaissance man. Anyway, so we continued to see each other and work on the issues that he came for. But what happened is that his Parkinson's was continuing to get worse. He had already retired, by the way, before the Parkinson's, but it continued to get worse. And it's really hard to be a carpenter, especially if you have Parkinson's. I got to tell you, he could still write poems, but it's really hard. But he insisted on still doing things. Now, of course, I advocate that you should live where you want to live. You need to know where you want to live and then find the place. That differs a little bit when you're married, because what he wanted to do was to go to the mountains, and his wife wanted to go to the beach. So what they did, of course, was to build a house on an island off the shore of North Carolina, which I've seen the pictures of it. I've never been there, but it looks gorgeous and really gorgeous setting. And even though he wanted the mountains, he's happy. And what they both, of course, agreed on was they wanted to be in a house where they lived on their own. But he has Parkinson's, and it is getting worse. There were days when he came into my office where he could barely talk. He would call it being off. And then he learned when to take his medication to make it better. I mean, Parkinson's is a really disease of logistics. You have to know when to take your medication based on what you're going to be doing. It's very complicated, but he was managing, not always. Sometimes he would be there and he could barely talk to me. Okay. Anyway, the house got built. They built a house. And he, from 200 miles, from 2 hours away, he managed a lot of it. He fought with the contractors. He got it done right to his specifications. And even when they moved in about 2 years ago, there was still some work to do, which he, of course, wanted to do. And while he was in Raleigh, he wanted to get his house ready to sell. So, of course, he insisted on doing carpentry work in the house, which sometimes he couldn't do. Okay. Now, what is happening all this time is that there are people who are telling him, and many, many people like him, that there's no way you're going to be able to live independently in a house by yourself while he's with his wife. But even that's too much. It's too much for her to do. Can't do it. But about 2 years ago, they moved in. Now, obviously, they just built a beautiful house on an island off the North Carolina shore. So money is not an issue for them. So that's luckily for them. Yeah. So they don't have a problem hiring people to come and be with him. Now, here's the bottom line, and here's what we're here to talk about today. He called me about a week and a half ago to tell me what is happening. He has a series of home health aides, and most of them are very good. And he's such a lovely man that they're going to respond to him anyway. He has trained one of them to be what he calls an apprentice for him. For instance, he finally, when I knew him, he was still in denial about this. He finally realizes that he cannot climb ladders and he cannot use power tools, such as a power saw. No more. He's done. He finally gave that up. But what he's doing is teaching this home health aide how to use a power saw, Well, she knew she could figure out how to climb a ladder, but what to do when she gets to the top of the ladder. He has turned her into his apprentice. Now, and no matter how good he's feeling, by the way, these days, he doesn't use the power tools. He doesn't climb the ladders. So, but even when he's feeling better and can do some things down below, like, hammering and nails and stuff, she's still there with him. He doesn't do it without her anymore. But the point is, and this is what I want everybody to know is that, and you don't have to be rich, by the way, because there are people, middle-class people who have home health aides. You find the right person who can help you continue to do what you love. So in a sense, the denial that he was in 5 years ago really worked out, because he can't do it the way he used to do it, but he found a way to continue to do his carpentry work. And of course, she even helps him write his poems, because when he can't move his fingers very well, she types, he dictates them to her. Now, these kind of people like her aren't just, a dime a dozen walking the street. You have to kind of look around a bit. But I wanted people to hear this story, because it shows that in many, many cases, and oh, by the way, I don't even want to tell you, about 3 years ago, he got another disease, and it was, and I don't remember the name. Every time he told me, I would forget the name. Fairly rare disease, and it's one that they thought would kill him in a year. If he was either going to be cured of it, or it would kill him. Well, 3 years later, when I was talking to him on the phone, he still has that disease. So he has Parkinson's and this. It's a matter of spirit, and it's a matter of thinking out of the box. It's a matter of deciding what it is you want. Now, we can't do everything we want. I am never going to become a point forward for the WNBA. We cannot do everything we want. But we can do a lot more than we think we can if we just don't give in to somebody saying, well, you're old, you have Parkinson's, you better come live in an institution. So that's my story, but I love it. I think it's a wonderful story. I was so happy to hear from him.
Yeah. Oh, that's fabulous. So years ago, I went to a pool in North Vancouver, and there was Aquasize. I was by far the youngest person who went to this thing, so I hang out in the back. But there was a guy who'd come to the pool. He wasn't part of our class, but he was in a like a wheelchair, probably 90 years old. And he had this 20-year-old Asian girl that was helping him. And he just had this big Cheshire grin on his face. It says, well, this is pretty good. So
yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah, it is amazing. If you get into the mindset that you can't, and you don't. But obviously this guy, he found a way to do what he wanted to do.
Yeah, and the young woman who's helping him was probably having a lot of fun. She never imagined she'd be running power tools and climbing ladders. Maybe that wasn't part of what she was.
Well, exactly. I mean, she was a home health aide, and now she's going to, when her job there is done, which, hopefully won't be for a long time, but she's going to have carpentry skills. I mean, she may do a whole other career.
Yeah, maybe she can go work on Betty's property.
Maybe she can come work on Betty's property. Yes. Fly her out, Betty. She'll be good. But yeah, he managed to actually find a way that's benefiting both of them. And it's not just the money that she's getting paid. She's actually learning another skill and thrilled to do it.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Yeah. I think the part about thinking outside the box is critical for anything that's related to any of these topics that we discuss, because so often people are told, oh no, you have to accept these limitations. This is it. You're on your downhill slide. There's nothing else to be done. And it's so much of our lives are in our minds, and your mind has so much influence over what happens in your life in general, and particularly on your health. So, you don't have to buy these ideas. As Margo just pointed out, you can have creative solutions that are good for everyone, and everybody's getting to do things they wouldn't have gotten to do otherwise.
Yeah. And as you were saying that, I was thinking, so for the people who have the course, when you're doing the Your Perfect Day exercise, do not say, oh, this would be my perfect day, but I'm not going to be able to do that because I have Parkinson's, or because, whatever, for any reason. I mean, maybe, but don't assume that that's the way it's going to be until you've really given it a try and really looked at other possibilities.
Right. Because if you never try, you surely are not going to succeed.
Exactly.
Yeah. Uh, Margo, do you know if there are sort of volunteer organizations that can help people with various things?
There are. I mean, it depends on where you are. For instance, where I am in Wake County, North Carolina, in order to graduate from high school, every student must do X amount of hours of volunteer work. At least it was that way before COVID. I mean, who knows what it is now, but that was a requirement for high school graduation. So, around here, you could call your local school. Is there someone, who would like to come over and get their hours by, taking me to the grocery store or helping me go for walks or me teaching them how to be a carpenter, by letting me teach them so that I can get some of the work done around here. There are a lot of church organizations that do that. And there are also ideas for people who, oh gosh, I'm sorry, for people who can pay a little bit, but not a whole lot. In the book that I wrote, You Can Keep Your Parents Home, one of the things I suggested was there might be a stay-at-home mom down the street who would love to have, a few extra dollars and do some good for somebody, to take people to the grocery store or, come and, play cards just, so somebody could have some company. So there's church organizations, go to schools, groups like the Rotary, sometimes they have things like that. Knights of Columbus. There's all sorts of, I would just call wherever you live, because it's different every place. I would just call around until you find one that says, oh yeah, we do that. And almost every place in the country is going to have somebody. And again, that's for free. But also there might be ways of finding people who can pay, if you can pay a little bit of money, of people who would like to have a little bit of money and something to kind of break up their day.
Right.
Yeah.
Around here we have Alliance on Aging, which provides a lot of different resources and opportunities for people. And as you said, Margo, anywhere that you live, there's going to be civic organizations that are specifically about helping people, and they're going to be able to give you some tips and possibly just send somebody right over. You never know.
Exactly. And if they're not doing it right now, one of the things that you can gain by calling is you put that idea into their head. If we're, you have to think of a political way to say, not political, but a easy way to say this. But if you're not doing it, why aren't you doing it? Although you want them to read it as, if we're not doing it, why aren't we doing it? So you have to think of a nice way to say it to them. But you can also give organizations ideas of things that their members could be doing. Fraternities and sororities. I remember, at the University of Iowa, all the fraternities and sororities used to do things, or they'd have people volunteering, or they'd have group projects. Like, for instance, they might go to someone's house and build ramps for someone in a wheelchair to be able to get in and out of their house. This is, usually the national office expected the local chapters to do things like that. So you call them up and say, hey, I can fulfill your need. You can fulfill mine. You've met your requirement to stay in the, the national organization, and you've helped me. So we'll be doing something for each other. That's also a way to present it to groups is, we're going to be helping each other. You'll get good publicity. And I'll get somebody to help me saw boards.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. It's a matter of keeping your mind open and knowing that there are things there, and not assuming that just because you have a particular problem, you're not going to be able to do what you want to do. Again, I'm going to get back to my client who is, at first, again, he started out being in denial and doing things he probably shouldn't have been doing. Now he realizes that he can't, but he found a way to continue. He's not doing it. I think if I were to ask him, wouldn't you really rather be doing it yourself? He'd say, well, of course I would. but he's gotten to the point where, but at least I'm still in the game. At least I'm still part of it. Which makes him feel more alive and happier. And again, they're probably going to stay in that house of theirs on the beach for many, many years, if not, their entire lives. I read a thing on, oh gosh, it upset me so much, on LinkedIn this morning. It was one of these bloggers who was a very pro happy aging blogger. You can go out there and, age and stuff. But he taught something about how 5% of people live their whole lives in their home. Everybody else has to go someplace and be taken care of. Now, I don't know where they got that particular statistic, by the way, and I don't think it's true. But you can get that statistic because basically, if somebody has to have a hip replacement and spend, a month in a rehab, they're probably counted in that 95% of people who can't spend their whole life in their own home. But then we're presented with these statistics. It says like, wow, only 5%. Boy, I'd better start, living my life in a way that constricts me so much that I'm going to be ready to have the money and to be used to living this way. So that when I go into assisted living or independent living, that I'll be able to do it. The senior housing industry is, I read the other day, it's like $298 billion industry and growing. So you figure these people have a lot of money to put out media and advertising and articles to convince you that you're going to have to do it too. And as they like to say, it's better to do it before you need it. Why they say that, I don't know, but they do all say that. But so if you get your mind going down that direction, you're not going to be open to thinking of, well, wait a minute, maybe I can hire somebody to come over and climb a ladder and run my buzzsaw for me, and I can still do my carpentry work. Your mind's going to go one direction or it's going to go the other. And yes, it's going to go one direction or it's going to go to the other. And I'd rather you err in the side of positivity than to be capable of being where you want to be, going to someplace you don't want to be because you're scared. There's other things you can do.
No, that's great.
Yeah. Good.
Options are good.
Options are good, and keeping your mind open is good. And being positive as long as you can will help you do that. There's a book written by a woman named Becca Levy, a PhD, an incredibly well-researched book. Really well-researched. She says everything I say, except she's done all the research to show that it's true. But what she came up with is that the more positive your attitude is about aging, it can actually add not just 8 years, but 8 healthy years to your life. That your mindset really does change things. And there's even a whole chapter on Alzheimer's, how it can even help with Alzheimer's. So, it just never give up your mind. You have to be realistic. If you're quadriplegic, although, you know what, I once had a client, I went to her apartment once a week. She was 34 years old. She was a quadriplegic, which means that, from the neck down, she basically couldn't move. Now, she had enough movement in her hands that she was in one of those motorized wheelchairs and she could move around. All of the door jams she'd run into them a lot. So they had a lot of scuffing there. She could use a telephone and she could use a remote control for the TV. If you put food in front of her, she could get about 80% of it into her mouth. Okay. She lived in an apartment all by herself. Now, in the morning, someone would come for 3 hours, get her out of bed, get her bathed, get her toileted and all of that, get her food for her, and get her pills out, do everything that needed to be done, and then left. And then she would be alone in the apartment during the day. And then at night, someone would come and spend about 3 or 4 hours with her and kind of reverse it. They'd feed her. They would get her back into bed. And now when she was in bed, she was there until the next morning when somebody else came. Now, that isn't for everybody. There are a lot of people in her position who would not want to do that. They would rather be where there's people around all the time, and that's fine. I'm telling you the story because it shows that she did it. And so if you really want to do it, and that's really what's best for you, you can do it. And, she was only 34 years old. And again, totally helpless.
Yeah.
But she lived alone.
Yeah, we have a friend right now who has cerebral palsy, and she's in that situation. Yeah, her health is deteriorating, so she's getting more help, but she's at home. It reminded me there about doing things. When there's a will, there's a way. Bonnie's previous husband had managed to get himself paralyzed, so they spent time in a rehab clinic in Vancouver. And there was a guy there, Michael Koss, who had was in a terrible accident and was mostly paralyzed. The accident was about 20 miles from where we're sitting right now. But anyway, he was just really upbeat one day. And one day he says, "Hey, Bonnie, I wrote a book." And she says, "How'd you write a book?" "Well, I got one finger that works." Anyway, so he wrote a book. I think he's written a number of books. He's got himself so that he can almost walk, I think, but and he's out, but it's just, like he was just determined not to let it hold him down. He just
Well, exactly. And I don't want to, to get into one of these things where, we're blaming people who don't do these things. I mean, if that's, you don't have to.
No.
But do know that you can. There's almost always a way to do something if that's what you want to do. Now, if you don't, fine. But he found a way to write books. My client found a way to become a carpenter, to continue to be a carpenter, and that's what he's doing. There's a lot more to do than you think. There's a lot more possibilities than you think. The point, I think, is not living in fear and negativity.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not in fear and negativity and say, yeah, but I'd still rather go to some place where there's people around all the time to take it, fine, do it. But don't do it because of fear and negativity. First, know what it is you want to do, and then figure out if there's a way that you can do it. Not everybody wants to write books or be carpenters or any of those things, and that's fine. But don't make your decisions based on negativity and fear.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, we're kind of related to that. Anne, my another partner, Bonnie and I are both 3 times lucky. Anyway, Anne had a gardening, and her favorite client, it was almost her first client, and her favorite client had a really nice show garden in West Vancouver, and Anne used to go work with her in the garden.
Mm-hmm.
But as she got older, when she got, in her late 80s, 90, she was less able to work in the garden. And then for the last years, she really didn't get out to the garden at all, and she stayed at home. But but she could appreciate her garden.
She could still appreciate it. And I'll tell you what I did, and I don't know if this would have helped her, but this last weekend, for the first time, I planted in the front and the back container gardens, and they stand about 4 foot high off the ground. So I was able to do the whole thing by standing up. Or I guess if I was in a wheelchair, I could have done it in a wheelchair. And that might not have been what this woman wanted to do, but there's even ways that we can continue gardening long after.
Yeah, no, she did all those things as long as she could.
Yeah.
With her Grumpy Old Men's Club, Ray's got this little one of these, a kneeler, right? Where with the handles, so you can put it down. You can kneel on the ground and do some gardening, and then the handles let you to get up.
You still got to get down on your knees, though.
Yeah, but at least you don't need helium balloons to get you off the ground.
Exactly. The containers off the ground. I voted for those. That was wonderful. I could stand up just like I was doing anything else.
Yeah, like the house that Anne and I bought in North Vancouver, the woman who lived there before had a stroke and was in a wheelchair. So the whole kitchen had been rebuilt to accommodate her. Like the counters were lower than normal, and then in the sink there was room for her to wheel up, so her knees could go under the sink,
Yeah.
and then all the cabinets were friendly. So
There are amazing things they can do to fit a house.
yeah,
Uh, whether what's going on with you is age issues or illness issues, there are amazing things that
yeah,
that can go on, uh, that we can do in houses these days,
yeah,
or in apartments
and
or
apartments, yeah.
wherever we are. Yeah.
You mentioned the ramp. The house had a big ramp
Mhm.
up to the front stairs. Like, it was only about 4 or 5 steps high, but it's a big ramp. And
Yeah.
we left that ramp there for, oh, probably a year or so, a couple of years. And then we eventually took it out and we made it into something like a playhouse in the backyard, which then when we started having music concerts, that served as a a stage for the backing
Cool.
vocalists.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah,
That's the old pioneer spirit. Find a
yeah.
use for everything.
Yeah, and I
Mhm.
think part of it is still forming of the floor in Anne's greenhouse, so we repurposed that ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, you guys, I'm gonna need to jump off in a minute because my phone's about to ring.
Okay,
Okay.
about to ring. You're channeling your phone, are you?
I know that my phone's about to ring. So,
Okay,
yeah.
well, this is probably a good time. I don't know if we have any questions from our studio audience here, but yeah. So so I guess to summarize, there are always options, and you can continue doing the things you love.
Mhm.
And there are people available, and possibly even organizations that can provide people to help you with that without it costing any money or much money.
Or much money.
Yeah,
And certainly less money than it would cost you to go into, assisted living or one of those places. Much less money than that. So,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
yeah, and I think, as you mentioned in a previous time, is even though you spend a big whack of money to go into an assisted living, you may not be able to do those kinds of things there because they won't have the facilities to do it,
That's
like the
right.
carpentry, right? The average care home does not have a
They're not
workshop
gonna go for that.
that they will give their inmates power tools. Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Right.
Well, Betty, good to see you, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure, Margo. Good to see you as well.
Okay. Well, we'll see everybody next Monday, if not before. And
Yes. And be
happy
sure to
Monday.
go to yourperfectliving.com and
Yeah,
find
well,
out.
yeah, yes, we forgot the whole purpose of So, Margo, maybe you can just summarize that a little
Well,
bit.
yourperfectliving.com, we help you figure out first what it is that you really want. And you may think you already know that, but if you don't know yourself well enough, and if you've been getting a lot of uh, information from the outside telling you something else, people who need to sell you things or people who are worried about you, first we tell you to figure out exactly what it is that you want. Then we give you modules with all of the possibilities, and even within those possibilities, all the different variations you'll find. And then, probably really importantly, maybe most importantly or second most importantly, is how to talk to salespeople, how to ask them questions. They are not going to want you to ask questions, but how you ask questions anyway. And how, when they give you a promise, how you make sure that that promise is going to be kept. Because I see too many people in these places, they might be happy, except that the promises that were made to them before they moved in were not kept. So we're going to help you figure out a way that you can make sure that promises are kept. We have a community for you where you can meet with like-minded people, other people who've been places, who might give you information, you might give them information. And it's just a whole lot of help for you to find the perfect way for you to spend the rest of your life, um, that's made just for you.
That's perfect. So thanks, Margo, and we'll sign off.
Okay.